This is the Two-Tone Uncensored Podcast. Hosts Matt McCrone, Ryan Moreland, and Glenn Lotzenheiser talk everything Tennessee Titans. This show is made for the fans that bleed two-tone blue.
This is Justin McCarrans, and you're listening to Two-Tone Uncensored.
Hello and welcome Two-Tone Nation. I'm your host, Ryan Moreland. Along with me tonight, my partner in crime and the conductor of the hype train, Glenn Lotzenheiser. How you doing, Glenn?
Oh, man, the hype train is busy all of a sudden, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, everybody's getting excited now. It's that time of season, man. It's everybody's ready. I'm ready, man. I just
need some football right now.
I hear you there. Matt's not going to be with us tonight. He couldn't make it. But in his place, we have Benjamin Scott, host of RPO podcast, formerly of MCM. How you doing, Ben?
Man, I'm doing great, fellas. How y'all doing tonight?
Great, man. Excited to have you on.
Yeah, I'm excited to be on. I think we had a couple of y'all on MCM radio back in the day when Brandon and I were hosting it, and we'll have to get you on RPO here pretty soon. But it's nice to join in your flavor and talk a little bit of Titans. I was telling you before the show, we're coming off like about a 3-week or month hiatus, so I will warn the audience if I'm slightly rusty, forgive me just a little bit, but we actually have some Titans news to talk about.
No, that's the best part is there's finally something to talk about. Also joining us, though, another guest on here, Hall of Fame member Tyler Musson, who was actually at training camp this week, so we're going to talk to him about that. How you doing, Tyler?
I'm doing good. Just walked into the house from a long drive back from Nashville, so a little tired, but I got a lot of room to talk some Titans.
All right, excited to have you on, man. Let's get into it here. We're going to start off by picking Tyler's brain a little bit, asking him what he saw at training camp this week, what he noticed. First thing, Tyler, I want to start it off. It's the one guy we've all been talking about. That's Kevin Dodd. His future, with this team has been called into question a lot by fans, and rightfully so after last season. What did you see from him so far since he's been back?
Quite honestly, Kevin Dodd was actually one of the guys I was watching the closest, with all the things coming up, about him and a repetitive injury. If you hadn't known that Kevin Dodd had an injury that lasted the entire season, you definitely couldn't tell here at the second practice of 2017. To me, he was playing in the fitting image of what we saw him versus Detroit. He was riding his blocker really good, just enough to spring loose on the ball carrier. And actually, what some guy that was below me in the stands, I actually said, I was like, those same moves are going to be the ones that make all those guys that are tagging him with the bus tag, they're going to make them wet the bed. I think he's going to be a healthy replenishment of Arakpo and Derek Morgan. And quite honestly, I think he's going to be the Tennessee Titan Comeback Player of the Year, just from what I saw of day 2.
I hope so.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
We were so excited, I think, in the preseason last year for General Dodd, kneel before Dodd. It was going to be a big thing. We were really relying on him to sort of provide some depth on that pass rush. And, it didn't happen. The foot injury is worrisome for a guy that's as big as he is. But, if he's looking 100% healthy, sort of coming back, and he's dealing day-to-day with the rigors of putting all that weight and putting all that stress on his foot after the reoccurrence of the injury and the multiple surgeries that he's had on it, I mean, that would be absolutely huge for us because he has as much raw talent as anybody that was in the draft last year in terms of his pass rush ability. We just didn't necessarily get to see that. So maybe a year in the classroom with Dick LeBeau, and a little bit of getting used to the NFL game, he's got to hit the ground running. I mean, I know the bust label is already being sort of thrown around out there. It's a little bit unfair, a little bit early for that, but he really needs to contribute this year if this defense is going to take a step forward.
Also, there was one more thing I also noticed. He's seeming to play, it's one thing to recover from an injury like that, and come back and play at average speed, what you're used to playing at. It seems like he's playing a lot faster too. He seemed kind of top heavy a little bit last year. He seems a lot more agile and, Brian Arakpo like in terms of agility.
Yeah, the other thing too, bringing in Walden, it's going to put a lot more pressure on Dodd to perform. So hopefully he's living up to what you're seeing so far, Tyler. But moving on to the next thing, earlier I talked to you, and you had some very good things to say about our pair of young rookie wide receivers. What did you like and take away from Davis and Taylor the other day?
Well, from Davis, for a guy that was picked 5th overall, he's sure living up to what we see on the scope. He has automatic hands, and his route running, I can see why we picked him at 5th overall. I can see why, some people say we reached. Well, you know what? We reached for the right receiver because this guy, he's making outstanding plays. He and Adoree Jackson went up for the first time, and Corey beat him pretty good. K1 is going to be one of those gems that actually, if J-Rob decided to go a different way with that 5th overall and, not end up taking a wide receiver in the first round, K1 could have been one of those picks that he got later to make him look like a genius. Because K1 sure looks like a wide receiver 1, in my opinion. He has just absolutely great hands. He's a great route runner, and he has absolutely stupid cuts. I've seen him go up against Adoree. It was a run play, but he broke Adoree's ankles on one play, which makes me wonder what he's going to be able to do in the slot versus a lot of these AFC South corners.
I think when it comes to Taiwan, I like a lot of what I've seen. I haven't gotten a chance to get out there in person. I should over the next few days to see some of the practices, but just watching some of the live streams and reading some of the reports from folks who have been there. It's certainly all really good to hear. It sounds like, he's really got a shot at sort of unseating Tajay, who had sort of a bumpy off season. If he's fallen out of favor, if Tajay's sort of taken his eye off the ball, I love the idea that Taiwan would be able to step in and contribute, but not be expected to carry a starter's load. Because the big thing for me is, look, I think Corey Davis has the size and the wingspan and everything to handle some of these bigger DBs in the NFL that'll get up inside of him, put their hands on him, and jam him at the line and really disrupt the timing of the play. That's going to be a much bigger challenge, I think, for Taylor. That's not something that he faced a lot at Western Kentucky. His athleticism lends itself to look really good in preseason and in training camp. I'm very interested to see what happens with live bullets, what guys are knocking him off his spot, and he's not able to get to where he's supposed to be.
That was the exact same concern I had with him, was that he's quicker than he is fast on the field. He's got great agility and great acceleration, but I'm curious to see how it translates at the NFL level against a whole different type of cornerback. And he's not going to run past people at the next level unless he makes a great move to get there first. One thing I do like is that both of these young receivers are good route runners. That's Corey Davis's hallmark. He's a tall, fast receiver, but he runs incredible routes. And the same thing with Taylor. He runs great routes. He's got good hands. That's going to make the biggest difference on them being on the field and earning Marcus's trust.
The one thing I saw, too, I wanted to comment on is one of the videos that I saw at training camp. Corey Davis, shakes right off of the line of scrimmage, on the right sideline and goes. And he takes off, and you're thinking of, for sure it's a go route. He's just taking off. And then he gets 10 yards down the field, and he makes a cut so clean and so – even if you're playing a physical corner, if he gets that separation initially, there's no way that's guardable. His cut was so fast and so unseen. I watched it several times because I was like, wow, you can't run that route better. It was so perfect that unless you had great contact and stayed with him through the whole thing, that is an unguardable cut. There's no way that you'd be able to come back in time if it's thrown well.
Look, I saw one today. LaShawn was playing him. It was their practice today. LaShawn was playing him. You couldn't get any tighter on Corey Davis as LaShawn was. And Corey just had the awareness and the fight for the ball it looked like it was either a guaranteed interception or at the least a batted down ball. And Corey fought and he won it with his overall awareness in the end zone. That, I think, is going to be key with Corey Davis.
Yeah, but LaShawn Sims has got the instincts of Helen Keller. I'm sorry, in my opinion. He he doesn't get his head around to find the ball. He reminds me of Ronaldo Hill back in the day. Ronaldo Hill was around every wide receiver that he was asked to cover, never got his head around and put his hands on a ball. So, but I mean, I know it's training camp, and Dick LeBeau is one of the best, so hopefully he comes along. But, you know, you guys talking about the precision and the route running and the physical ability of these guys, that's, to me, one of the most exciting things that Robitsky has brought, and you can tell it's definitely a big point of emphasis for Malarkey. Marcus is such a machine and so good at knowing exactly the timing of the play, where the open spot's supposed to be, and getting it to that open spot before the guy has even, you know, made his break or beaten the defender that's guarding him. Their emphasis on finding guys who can get off the line and run their route correctly and get where they're supposed to be, as opposed to your Dorial Green Beckham physical freak types who would be like, you know, Mettenberger, who can't hit the broadside of a barn but can just chuck it up there. I think that's one of the smartest changes they've done over the past 2 years, and it's just going to keep reaping benefits if they find guys like Rashard Matthews, not a physical freak, but a guy who just gets there when he's supposed to be there and gets it, and, you know, makes the catch.
Yeah, if you can get any separation and be on your spot, Marcus is going to hit you with the ball. You know, so that part is taken care of. The play that Tyler was talking about with Sims, my only problem with that play, and, you know, I watched the video. It's on Facebook. It's on the group page. As soon as the ball snapped, Sims immediately had to turn his hips and run in order to keep up with Corey Davis. And all Davis had to do is exactly what Ryan just mentioned, is stop and turn around. And that it was so easy for him to beat that route that Sims was on. It's just, it was a go route and it was going deep. That's the only reason why Sims was still in that play at that point. And I was a fan of Sims and his ability to mirror going into last offseason. The turning the head, as Ben mentioned, is a problem for me. He did a better job. I think that part of this play, you know, it's training camp, so you're going to keep your eye on the quarterback better. But he did a much better job than I've seen him do in the past of watching the quarterback and keeping track of where the ball's going to be at, so he could challenge Corey Davis on that go route. But his eyes were not on Corey Davis, so Corey Davis could have done whatever he wanted to him and would have been wide open. Yeah, he was counting on the sideline to help, you know, keep Corey from coming back in on him. All Corey had to do was put on the brakes and turn, and the ball was his, because there's no way Sims was going to be able to turn and get back to challenge that ball as sharp as Corey Davis runs those routes.
Well, that go route in the end zone that Corey Davis, you know, thrown up, Sims played that ball. Got
really well.
Tip. See, he got the tip. He tipped it away. The problem was he didn't tip it far enough away, and Corey Davis is a freak of nature and snagged it out of the sky. When I watched that play, I was like, both guys did exactly what they're supposed to do. Corey Davis ran a good route. Sims mirrored him and stayed with him. Sims made a play on the ball. He just didn't get enough of the ball, and after the tip, Corey Davis was able to snag it out of the air. There's not a lot of wide receivers that are going to make that play, though.
Yeah, and, you know, and so
yeah.
We've talked about Sims. What did you guys see from the other guys, like Logan Ryan, Adoree Jackson? You know, those are the guys that everybody really wants to know about.
Adoree Jackson, the biggest thing with him that's fresh to see is speed in the secondary. His hips have gotten a lot better than I gave him credit for, but his ability to turn and sprint with the receiver, that's great, because he has that, and that's vital for his recovery speed. But the only thing with that is we don't want a cornerback who is constantly having to do that every single play, because then you're getting beat at the line, and then you're opening yourself up for, you know, Antonio Brown over the top or whatever, what have you.
Paris Cox.
Yeah, exactly. Go look at the Green Bay Packer game and look at how many times Paris Cox was thrown at covering Jordy Nelson, and that's the only thing that worries me about Ajax. He needs to clean up some of his technique. Am I worried that it won't happen, that he won't clean it all up? No, not at all. I think Dick will work with him, but I think he's going to be the nickel guy covering the slot, because, you know, whether we have convictions about LaShawn Sims turning his head around or not, he got the better part of 80% of the first team reps. So that, to me, at least for now, says to me Ajax is going to be covering those speedy slot guys. Also, Sims seemed to keep up with Corey and actually Eric Decker several times, but it seemed like it was like overkill trying to keep up with him. So I don't know if that's a Paris Cox kind of thing, or if that's, you know, him just truly giving it his all. Logan Ryan seemed everything that we signed him to be. You know, we signed him at a pretty decent contract. You know, he's going to be our number one. You know, people say he's going to be in the slot. He might move around here and there, but I think he is our number one guy. And, you know, any other Titan fan is going to say, well, he's probably the number one anyway. He plays the inside of the receiver very well. I saw that when he matched up against Corey once. The ball wasn't thrown. That direction was thrown to Decker, but Logan plays the inside of the receiver very well. It's just the way Logan Ryan puts himself in front of the receiver where it makes a over-the-top ball a little difficult. I don't want to say impossible, but that's definitely what you want to see in your number one. The ability to cover that and also the ability to shield the inside. So I think sky's the limit with Logan Ryan.
When they go 7-on-7 or 11-on-11, what is the safety rotation looking like? I mean, on the RPO podcast, we're huge fans of Cyprian, hashtag Cip Squad. I love that signing. I think he's going to bring a real physical presence that Dick LeBeau is going to have a lot of fun with, set them up for sort of some 3 safety looks and have him sort of drop into the nickel and be kind of a linebacker safety hybrid. Are they starting to show a little bit of that yet, or are they still in kind of the baby steps of rolling things out?
The 7-on-7s they were doing, actually they did an 11-on-11 for a couple minutes where they had the first team formations out there. Searcy was a single high, and then Cyprian would be where what we drafted Jayon Brown to do, cover the damn tight ends. Cyprian was in that spot. So I think they're blending it all in, and I think you're going to see more Cyprian covering tight ends than you might actually think. But they're moving them all over the place. So it's like within the first 2 days, they're getting a feel of, okay, is Cyprian going to work best here with Searcy back there? You know, it's just like a big blender, basically. They're just trying to figure it out. But I did see Cyprian in that tight end cover role right now.
Let's move on here. One of the things I definitely wanted to bring it up because, you know, when you were sending me your notes and me and you were talking, Tyler, one thing definitely caught my eye because you had a lot of good stuff to say about Derrick Henry, but it's not the stuff I was expecting to see. You're expecting to see, you know, powerful runner, and you mentioned that kind of stuff, but there was one part that you were really high on, and it wasn't Derrick Henry's running game, but catching the ball. You were talking about how good he looked with his hands. Tell us more about that.
They did one-on-ones. They were doing all running backs versus middle linebackers. Well, linebackers, forgive me. And Derrick Henry, I don't remember the linebacker he went up against. And they were having him run an inside and then just a straight streak. Derrick, his added, you know, we've heard over the course of the off season that he's been working on his speed and then he's found an extra gear out of nowhere. Well, he's able to blow by linebackers now a lot faster than what we were able to see in the last year. But in the off season, it's like he was down in Alabama and having somebody throw, you know, hit pop flies at him, and he's catching them barehanded at full sprint. He has tremendous over the head reach now. Now again, that's 2 plays, but you know I wouldn't have expected him to be able to do that last year. So whatever he's doing, you know, eating his Wheaties, taking his vitamins, drinking his milk, whatever the hell he's doing, it's working with his catching ability. And I think he's going to be using a lot of screens this year.
Well, okay. I mean, I can speak to that a little bit as well, because this is one of the things that we sort of cracked last year, looking back at the draft after we had taken everybody. For anybody that listens to our show, I threatened to actually physically choke out my co-host Dynamite at the time if we drafted Derrick Henry, because I thought we just had overkill at the running back spot, and ended up eating my words on that one. And one of the things that I figured out diving through some of the research was that he didn't catch the ball at Alabama because they just never throw it to any running back that they've ever had in there under Nick Saban. Now, when the couple of times they did throw it to him, he performed very well and showed some nice hands. During the pro day at Alabama, they actually ran out of wide receivers for the quarterback drills. He jumped in there and didn't drop a single pass the entire time. So his ability to catch the ball has actually been kind of an untapped resource. that not many people know about. He just hasn't had a chance to display it. So I love the fact that, hopefully being in the NFL weight room with NFL trainers, not necessarily losing weight, but adjusting his body to gain a little bit more explosiveness and speed. If he can take advantage of that in the passing game, dude, look out. Because like you said, if we can get a decent screen game going with all the deceptive things they can already do with Marcus and his mobility and the versatility of the wide receivers and the tight end group, I mean, nobody's going to have any idea what the hell's going on when we come up to the line.
Yeah, Jalen Ramsey's already seen what happens whenever Derrick Henry gets the ball rolling down the field.
I was going to say the exact same thing.
And Derrick Henry's muscle mass, it's only getting bigger. I mean, you'd think the human body would top out at some sort of a mass level, but he's only getting bigger. And I think, the easiest time it was to tackle Derrick Henry last year. So you couple all that with all the receivers we got now, Delaney, DeMarco, spelling Derek when he needs it, and the opposite as well. People aren't going to be able to get Derek because Derek's going to be left on cornerbacks on the slot, and he's just going to run over them and take their lunch money. I mean, Derek's going to be so big and so hard to tackle, and you couple that with an improved and a used pan game for him, it's crazy to think that he has to be on the bench. But, we have DeMarco, but
dude, he's such a battering ram. We're prone to saying he makes defenders make a business decision. When you see him coming through the hole and he's got a little bit of steam ahead, you got to decide if you're going to put your career on the line trying to tackle this dude or if you're just going to dive at his shoelaces.
I would dive at his shoelaces. I'm bigger than him. I would dive at his shoelaces. I don't want all that hitting me.
Dude, that's just a good business decision, man. You're keeping your earning potential.
Damn right. Hey, so speaking of business decisions and muscle mass, how's Marcus looking? Because we know he's down a little bit in weight off of how he came into camp last year. I think we've all seen him running around a little bit, online. But how's he look in person? As far as his scrambling, how sharp he is with the ball, any rust at all?
Marcus, that goes back to the Kevin Dodd thing. If you wouldn't have known Marcus had his ankle fallen on by a 7,000-pound defensive tackle and it broken, you would have never guessed it because he does not favor it. He does not. The coaches basically said, do what you will. Whatever you want to do, go for it. I mean, I'm sure they're going to hold back some things just for 150% insurance. He doesn't get hurt again. But he's not favoring anything, and his boot legs, there's not a hesitation. There's not like, okay, do I have to spin a certain way? Is it going to hurt if I spin, the opposite, whatever. He also scrambled twice. And that actually proved that it's not in his mind that durability is an issue. And that's actually really refreshing to see because a lot of quarterbacks, when they take injuries, they'll hesitate when scrambling and they'll wait in the pocket too long and then sack, fumble, hurt again, whatever. When he sees a lane and he knows that he can get it and go, he's doing it. And he did it. He did it the first time for a good gain and the second time about a 4 or 5 yard gain. So, as far as, him being rushed or anything, he's shaking off the cobwebs a little bit with, full team go. But he threw one pick. And, actually, correct me. He didn't throw any picks the day that I was there. I thought it was Mariota, but it was Matt.
He hasn't thrown one yet. From the reports I've heard.
Yeah, at first I thought it was Mariota, but someone told me that it was Matt Castle. Actually, I'm more excited to see about how less he's going to have to scramble because of all these excellent receivers we have. Because a lot, you think back to 2015 season, he pumped up a lot of rushing numbers because we didn't have the receivers to get open. We had Dorial, we had Kendall when he was healthy, and we didn't have the receivers when he was having to take off more and more. But now I think he's going to be scrambling a little bit less just because he's going to be able to stand there 2 seconds, boom, Davis, boom, Decker, so on and so on. I think he's ready to go. But I think the coaches are going to pull him back just a tad, just to make sure there's nothing that goes wrong.
I did actually hear that he did throw one yesterday, but
it's his first red zone.
Yeah, but the very next play he threw a long touchdown pass. So, I mean, he came back strong.
Fake news.
As long as he's not throwing 5 interceptions, like a certain quarterback in Florida, I'm fine.
I knew it had to come up eventually, man. That was, whew.
Yeah.
My favorite part of that is 2 of those interceptions went to Tyler Patman. And for those who don't know that name, he couldn't make our practice squad.
Right.
This is true.
Yeah. It took me a minute to remember who the hell he was. And when you said something, I was like, who the hell is this guy? And I looked him up, I'm like, oh, yeah, that dude. One real quick thing that I also saw, I think my favorite right now, I would actually bet money on it. Talfani Muhammad looks like he might be our kick returner. And Adoree,
love that dude.
Adoree, people who think Adoree isn't going to be returning punts, they say Eric Weems or, someone else, down the wide receiver depth chart. I don't think that's going to happen at all. I think we learned the night of the draft it wasn't going to happen because what John Robinson said to Ajax was, can't wait for you to get in this division and lock these receivers down and return these punts for touchdowns. So that kind of sells down the river what's on the agenda, at least until disproven, is Adoree Jackson, the punt returner. But Talfani Muhammad is getting a lot of work on the kickoff return.
That's good for us, too. You don't want to work out Jackson too much. You don't want to be in a position where he's getting too many reps and wearing himself out, getting injured, that kind of thing. So definitely something that's good. But thanks for coming on, man. A lot of good information there.
No problem, man. Not a problem at all.
All right, another big thanks to Tyler Musson for coming on the show with us. All right, guys, let's jump into the mailbag here. First question from Hall of Famer Josh Pryor. What are the 3 most important non-divisional games on our schedule this season?
Let's see. I'll take first stab at it. I mean, the divisional games kind of mean everything, I think, for us going into this year. But if I got to pick one out of division game, it's a toss-up to me between the Raiders and the Seahawks. I'll go with the Seahawks game. Raiders, obviously, week 1, you want to get started off on the right foot. That's obviously a big one. But the Seahawks game is the kind of game that I think this team's got to win if they're going to take that next step forward. I've been saying over and over again this offseason, the difference between 2 wins and 9 wins is much smaller than the difference between 9 wins and 11 or 12 wins. That is a canyon to try and cross, and it's taking care of teams that, like those West Coast teams that have killed us, like the Seahawks, that are going to make the difference if we're going to take that step.
Yeah, I can't possibly argue with that. That's the same game I was looking at. The Raiders as the opening week, that's a big deal, but that's one we can make back up. It is, however, in our conference, so it makes it a big game. The Seahawks is kind of more of that level. This is where we're at. And for that same kind of reason, I'll go ahead and say the Steelers, November 16th. That's going to be a huge game for us. Everybody's tuned up for the playoffs at that point. So you're going to get everybody's best shot because if we've been winning like we expect to win, everybody's going to see us coming this year. There's not going to be a single team that goes, it's the Titans, we'll be all right. That's not going to happen now. They saw what we can do last year. They saw us load up on offense. They know we're coming. So when we get to the Steelers, we're going to have a pretty good idea of how good our team is. But when we play the Steelers in Pittsburgh, we're going to find out on Thursday night, is this team playoff ready or not? Because we may be going to the playoffs regardless, but that game's going to tell us a lot about our chances once we get there.
Yeah, the 3 I went with week 1 against the Raiders. These 2 teams are seen as kind of the 2 up and coming in the AFC as a whole. The 2 that could possibly in the future, dismantle the Patriots or, at least contend with them. Beating them week 1 will show people where we actually stand. And I know that doesn't really matter that much. It doesn't matter what they think of you if you're winning football games. But also, just on a personal note, it'll be a nice revenge for the last 2 years. It sucks losing these games to Oakland in tight ball games. I want to get one. Week 11 Steelers, in Pittsburgh, Thursday night, just like Glenn was saying. This is a really good AFC football team, a regular Super Bowl contender, a regular in the playoffs. This is a really good football team. So if we can compete and, possibly beat this team, the whole nation's going to be watching. This is going to be the big eye-opener if we win this game. It's not the oh, the Titans are an up-and-coming team. It's, oh, the Titans can make playoff runs. If they're beating teams of this caliber, they can make playoff runs. And then the last one, I thought about the Seahawks, but I actually went away with it because I personally think the Seahawks take a big step back this year. Just because their offensive line's nasty. I mean, it's ugly. Most people rating it as the worst offensive line in the league, and I tend to agree with that. So I'm going to go with the Cardinals, Week 14. As long as Carson Palmer's healthy, this is going to be a really competitive team. I mean, you remember in 2015, when he's on the field, this is a good team. They're going to have a good defense, as they always do. With DJ there and Carson Palmer, if he's healthy again, that's going to be a very potent offense as well. Also, very late in the year, so it could have playoff implications for us. We kind of have an easy stretch those last 4 games. This is probably going to be the one to watch out of those last 4 games. Hopefully, everything goes smooth. We went out those last 4 games, and the playoffs are just, getting to the playoffs is just a breeze for us. If the Seahawks are better than I expect, if Carson Palmer goes down, then obviously that's the 3rd game. But really, I think it comes down, and I don't know if you guys agree or not, I really think it comes down to 2 huge games, in my opinion. That's the Raiders and the Steelers, and both of them I want to try to get wins there, obviously, but both are going to be tough games.
Yeah, no question. You can't go into either one of those games thinking you got this.
All right, let's move on to the next one here. Chris Flint asks, we see these difficult agencies to work with, like Corey Davis's agent, who was also the agent of Joey Bosa last year. Does that impact a general manager's desire to draft certain players? And also, to add to that, could it hinder future decisions on prospects represented by that agency?
No. The NFL, especially now with the salary slotting system, I mean, holdouts are extremely rare. This isn't baseball. You could really play hardball, get a team bidding against itself. I just don't think agents matter all that much in the NFL right now, and I don't think it's going to necessarily hinder someone in the way that it can in baseball or in basketball, where they can really hold out and do some damage because of the berth they're given under their CBA. The NFL, it's too codified. I mean, Corey Davis was the last one to sign, and he didn't even really miss anything that was significant. Bosa was a little bit of an outlier last year. Titans have a really weird history of letting their first-round picks be some of the last guys to sign, waiting until the beginning of August to get them in there. It usually has to do with the offset language. I just don't think it's that big of a deal.
Obviously, we have something in our language that these players are balking at. But really, the offset kind of language, that should only bother a player if he's afraid to bet on himself. If you believe that you're going to play for 4 years, those offsets will never come into play. It will be an issue. If you're going to go surfboarding with sharks, okay, but you had that coming.
Isn't Blaine Gabbert like the only player for whom offset language has mattered?
Pretty much.
If I'm not mistaken, he's the only one where that's been like activated when he got cut and ended up with the 49ers.
Yeah, I mean it's not going to happen to a first round pick very often. They're going to give you your chances to make it. Very rare does it ever kick in there. My thing is if you're an NFL GM, if you've risen to that level and you're scared of negotiating with an agent in a time where the contracts are as simple as this, you shouldn't be a GM. You're a damn coward. Because there's just not that much to talk about. The Joey Bosa thing is the longest we've seen it go, and he missed more time than he should have, but it's also the Chargers. They're known for being dicks about this stuff. The Titans, it always seems to be off-the-field activities. The Chargers were screwing with his money and when he could get his money. They didn't want to pay him right away. With the Titans, I don't think it's ever been about the money. I think it's about certain exclusions, like you cannot ride a motorcycle, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. If that happens, we have this as our recovery and our safety fallback for it. That's the kind of offset language that I think the Titans are dealing with.
Personally, for me, I think it's something, they've built a reputation enough that it's something that the GM's probably going to know going into the draft, but ultimately it's not going to change his mind. Really just ask yourself, would you rather have a semi-difficult negotiation with a great player or pass on him for the guy that's going to sign easy that's not as good? The only way that this ever comes into a general manager's mind is if he has 2 guys that he has rated exactly the same and wants and needs exactly the same, and then he can be like, all right, well, this guy's going to be easier to sign. We'll grab him since they're exactly the same. But that you're never going to be in that scenario ever. So no, it doesn't affect. It might be. I think it will be something the general manager knows. It'll be in the back of his head, maybe, but that's not going to stop him from taking the best available guy. You know, you're not going to pass on someone you think is the best fit for someone that's going to be easier to negotiate with.
Yeah, I had the exact same written down.
The only thing that I think could sort of change the game on that is when we finally have a player and an agent who team up and say they're not going to sign until they get a fully guaranteed contract. Then you could see that agent suffer some kind of blackball-ish repercussions, the team's not wanting to work with him, teams not wanting to give him business, all that sort of stuff. But the reality is the market is way too set in the NFL. There's not that much wiggle room in terms of contracts, and the agents just don't have to do that much.
I was going to say, you're not going to see that stance with a rookie. It's just you don't have the power. All you could do is wait for another year and come back in the draft, and your draft stock is going to fall because you didn't play football for a year. So you don't have the power as a rookie to force that negotiation. Now, I've brought this up a couple times on our show that I think we are headed for, if not a holdout, some kind of a big event happening with these guys where I don't think these players are going to wait for the next CBA to come around before they start demanding fully guaranteed contracts. The CBA doesn't preclude them from having one. It's just no one's ever been able to force the team to sign that. You know, Odell Beckham Jr., he's going to push in that direction. I don't think he's going to get the money he wants, but I bet he gets a fully guaranteed contract when it comes time. Guys, talk about that NBA money. Like Le'Veon Bell is screwing himself because the team can sign him for less than he's wanting for the next 2 years. And at that point in time, you're looking at a 30-year-old running back, or I think a 28 or 29-year-old running back at that point. He's already spent his best years playing for them. And then if he wants to play hardball, you're a running back. They can't replace you no matter how good you are. He's playing his cards the wrong way. A guy like Odell Beckham, he's going to have to work really hard on that. A quarterback is going to be the guy that gets that first huge 100% guaranteed contract. And it may be a guy like Kirk Cousins, who's going to hit that free agent market eventually, where he's easily better than three-quarters of the quarterbacks that are playing and starting in the league. When he hits free agent, that's when we're going to see that test of, can this player, who's shown to be a very painful negotiator, the contracts he's refusing from Washington, most guys would have taken already. So I'm really curious to see if he's the one who takes that stance.
He's playing under a second-year franchise tag. If they franchise him one more time, he will have played 3 years. Now, guaranteed just year to year. But he will have played 3 years and made like over $50 million. I mean,
you can only do it twice. Oh, yeah.
Well, no, because I think
it's a transition tag is the third year.
Yeah, the third year is a transition tag where it's like 150% of the franchise hold or something like that. I mean, it's absolutely absurd that any team would pay that much for a quarterback, especially, one that's not Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, that's the thing I'm most looking forward to about next season, not Titans related, is to see what happens to the Redskins and their salary cap when he refuses to sign again.
Well, the one thing, too, with this is everybody keeps reporting the big money that, the contract they're throwing at him, but they're guaranteeing like 28%, 32%, 36%. They're not guaranteeing enough to get him to sign. They're
hedging their bets.
Right, and that's the team should try to do that. Obviously, you want to try to get be able to put the weapons around him to make him successful, to make the team successful, ultimately win a championship. But you're going to have to get way higher than that. You're probably going to have to at least guarantee 60%. I mean, at least.
Yeah, it's going to work out that way. The thing is if he hits free agency, he's going to Andrew Luck some team, and they're going to give him so much money they can't put a team around him.
That's what I'm waiting for. I think that, the Redskins in their mind, obviously they want the best team possible. Like any other team, they want to win Super Bowls, whatever. But I also feel like there's a small piece, back in the owner's mind that's man, I hope he has a shit year. I hope he just, is garbage. And if we decide to sign him, we'll get him for, half the price that we could have, last year. But let's move on here. Next question, guys. Dawson Leverett asked this one. Who finishes this season as the Titans' most productive wide receiver? This one's a tough one.
We're going to stick strictly wide receiver. I'll probably say Richard. I think he's going to be kind of the steady Eddie, Derek Mason type. I think Corey Davis probably has more highlights. I think he's the guy we're most excited about by the end of the season. But I think Richard probably ends up leading the way. I still think Delaney Walker is going to be the most productive pass catcher on his team.
He certainly could be. Yeah, I'm curious. I'm torn because I have the same thoughts about Richard that you do before Eric Decker came to the team. If Eric Decker can put those injuries behind him, I think he presents that big red zone target that Marcus just, he dumps the ball over there because he knows he's going to go get it. The reports that I'm hearing from camp is that they've already shown some chemistry, but he's got chemistry with, I think, any receiver who runs his route properly. Marcus has chemistry with you. I think that Decker ends up being the guy as long as he can prove that he's really healthy and can stay that way.
Oh, yeah, God. You know how much Nashville would fall in love with a big white wide receiver?
We've said it several times.
It'd be Drew Bennett all over again.
Mm-hmm. We had Drew on the show just last week. He's awesome.
This one for me was a kind of a loaded question because if everyone wants to hear Corey Davis off the bat, first off, but if I'm going yardage and probably targets, I'm probably going to pick the easy bet, the safe money, and I'm going with Rashard Matthews. If I'm going touchdowns, then I'm leaning towards Decker. Because of how good he is in the red zone, how good Marcus is in the red zone, I expect that to be a pretty prolific tandem, but I'm also looking at, Rashard is the only guy that's coming in that knows the system. That's probably going to be in our top, 4 wide receivers. Yeah, I mean, you're looking at the only guy that has experience in the system. It's going to come down to how comfortable Marcus is. I think Rashard Matthews does a great job of getting open, like we talked about earlier. I think you're going to see him get the most targets. I think you're going to see him probably get the most yards as well. I think you're not going to see him get the most touchdowns. I actually wouldn't be blown away to see him come third in touchdowns and still finish with the most yards. Third in touchdowns behind Decker and Corey Davis. That wouldn't shock me. That wouldn't blow my mind.
I couldn't argue with that because I think these guys are going to be allowed to use their best tools and the most effective way they are on the field, and that's going to be what they're there for. Decker's going to be a first down, red zone kind of guy. You're going to have Davis as your deep shot. You're going to have Taylor. They're going to do all kinds of different things with him, just working him loose and just getting him into space. And then, like you said, Matthews is that guy. He always finds a way to get open, and Marcus definitely trusts him.
I mean, just think about down in the red zone. We line up on the 5-yard line. We've got Delaney, Decker, and Davis. And then Rashard Matthews is like the fourth guy they have to pay attention to, and he led the team in touchdowns last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
Right, you're correct. Well, the one nice thing, too, is the Titans always seem like they get that one type and they stick with it. Like, we either have, all big, athletic wide receivers that don't run good routes, don't have great hands, or we get, really small. I think about, the Justin Hunter, DGB era, and then, Kenny Britt, and then, it's, all Kendall Wright and Harry Douglas and
Calico.
Yeah, you get, these real small guys then. If we're finally diverse. We have a little bit of everything right now. That's obviously the goal. What you want is a little bit of everything, but it seems like we always get pigeonholed into one type of guy or another.
Yeah, it's a matchup league, and if you don't have variety, you can't get the matchups you're trying to win.
Perfectly stated. Charles Scaife asked this one. This is a really good question. It's maybe my favorite of the week. I really like this one. Do you anticipate the blocking schemes to change from a lot of max protection to a lot less backs in the backfield, a lot more empty sets, 3 wide receiver kind of stuff?
No, please, I hope not. I love the fact that they were able to do what they were able to do while still providing solid blocking, not selling out on the pass game, still having the run game be a threat, and letting Marcus use some of the play action and the bootleg stuff. I think power is still going to be this team's calling card. They are still exotic smash mouth, dude. Line up, grind them into the ground. In the fourth quarter, they're going to submit. What was the saying last year? Was it stomp the dead, trample the weak? Or stomp the strong, trample the weak? Something like that was like an Attila the Hun quote. I still think that's this team's calling card, and it would be really disappointing to see if they just sold out and started playing like a Madden team and started running a whole bunch of spread stuff, because then you're not getting the most out of Henry and out of Nudie, out of this offensive line, which is not an area blocking offensive line. It's a hat on a hat, manpower scheme. We just want the wide receivers to be better than they were last year. We don't have to change things dramatically as far as X's and O's, in my opinion.
Yeah, we saw how well this passing game worked last year with admittedly limited receivers. We have a much better set where we can put them out there and create matchup problems and still run our base offense. It is a smash mouth team. The wheels on the bus go round and round. We all remember that from the Steelers with, the bus. There's no reason we can't do that with Derrick Henry and do that with DeMarco Murray. Now we have some dynamic athletes on the outside who can get open, who can make plays for us. And that it takes advantage of that power run scheme because these other guys can do things for you. When you do run those weird trick plays, which is the exotic part, you're going to see, these guys get open, get wide open because of the stuff that we're going to be running. And you don't have to run what we did last year, which was you run a narrow set in the center of the field and you have to cross the field to get deep. We don't have to cross the field to get deep anymore. We can just run deep now. So we have so many more options. The empty backfield, I'm sure, will show up at some time because Robisky likes to do some weird things sometimes. But if that becomes a staple of this team, then we have all vastly misunderstood what this coaching staff is about.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, obviously, you'll see a little bit more than you did last year, just given the talent and given how much success Marcus has in that system, going empty sets. But you guys nailed it on the head. This is still a power running team. This is still a downhill running team. And, Benjamin, you put it really well. This offensive line excels when it's hat on a hat, when it's man. When you start throwing zone at them, we're not going to be as effective. So why try to do it? Just, put a guy against the guy. Let's run forward. Let's do that. But, Glenn, it popped in my head when you were talking about this. I want to throw it out there real quick. I don't know if you guys saw the video or not, but you're talking about Robisky's weird plays. Delaney scored a touchdown, I believe it was today in practice, where they did a read option fake, and obviously Marcus keeps it, starts running like it's a read option, like towards the line of scrimmage, which pulls the guy, Delaney was playing on the outside, pulls the cornerback inside, pulls the safety in, and then last second, right before he gets to the line of scrimmage, Marcus pulled up and threw a screen pass out to Delaney, and he just took off down the sideline. And it was one of those plays where you're like, oh, that's kind of neat, but like, please God, don't run that. I feel like there's so many plays, and Benjamin, I don't know how you feel about it. I know Glenn's on my side, but there's so many plays that you're like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? And then it breaks wide open. You see a guy streaking down the sideline. You're like, all right, Robisky's a genius. All right, I can't explain it. That play was dumb as shit, but it worked.
Well, the thing is, we finally have a coaching staff that can install those plays, teach it to the guys properly, and have it work every now and then in the game, as opposed to the previous coaching staff we've had where they would throw that stuff in there, but it was always a disaster right from jump. I mean, whether it was Wisenhunt, whether it was Munchak, even towards the end of Fisher's era. I mean, like some of the bubble screens and some of the trick plays and deception stuff, they were just so bad at it. Whereas Munchak and Robisky, or Malarkey and Robisky, are much more in tune with how to pull that kind of stuff off, how to slip it into the flow of the game, how to set it up and then come back to it. They're just so much more skilled at it. It's like when we would try and run a screen game, and we were terrible at it. Dinger, God bless him, I love him, rest in peace, but he could not call a screen game consistently. And it would drive me nuts when we would play like the Eagles and watch Andy Reid run a screen game like clockwork, like to perfection. It'd be like, God, why can't we do that with like a Chris Johnson or somebody like that? Well, you don't have the coaching staff that understands how to implement it.
Absolutely. Robisky, he's a lot trickier than I think I liked last season. The beginning of the season, why they were just, I don't know if they were just putting things on film so other teams would have to think about this. Yeah. It felt a lot like that. Like, man, you only read that play, so some other defensive coordinator will see that and go, what the hell is that crap? And, at least it'll distract him from doing his job or something. Whereas this year, I think you're going to see a lot more straight up coming right at your face offense, with the exotic mixed right into the middle of it. So they're going to have that same formation. That's what I was trying to say. I think this year we're going to see a lot of those same formations, but we're going to, like you said, we're going to run them better. They're going to be better coached. But also, by doing this, it lets us run those same formations and really get tricky with it. The things you used to see with Cordell Stewart in Pittsburgh, they didn't run those out of weird formations. Those weren't out of odd sets. It wasn't like loading up in the pistol. They weren't coming out there in an empty backfield or running the wildcat. They ran those out of their basic formations, and they just got really tricky with it. And that's what I expect to see from the Titans is the same formations, just a dozen different plays from the same look.
You're right there. I mean, the play I was talking about was shotgun with a man set off to the left. Very common, formation. Nothing weird about that. The only weird thing would be Delaney set off as the wide man on the outside, but we do that a lot with Delaney Walker, so it's not that weird for us. I always go back and forth, though. Like, is Robisky the mad scientist that's, like, sitting back there figuring out things and seeing if they work together, or is he more of the chess guy, chess player, like Glenn was saying, that, I'm going to throw out this on film because he's going to prepare for it, or I'm going to get them to believe we're doing this and open up the holes. I always go back and forth. Like, is he the mad scientist that I don't want, or is he the chess player that's a great coach? And I don't know. Last year he was right more than he was wrong. That's for sure.
Yeah, and definitely right in the second half more than he was wrong, which was one of the nice things to see. This team played a lot better in the second half, just about every single week than we'd seen in a couple of years before.
Absolutely, you're 100% right there. One more question, guys, in the mailbag before we close it out and head on to the news. George Richards sends this one in. What do you expect the cornerback depth chart to look like week 1?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I mean, Logan Ryan's about the only one you can just lock in at the top. I mean, after that, I would love to see Adoree win a starting spot. I just don't think it's going to happen. Dick LeBeau is not a huge fan of rookies. Looking back over the course of his career, I mean, he doesn't put up with mental mistakes. That's what killed Parrish Cox here. He doesn't put up with guys who are just not going to follow through on the game plan and get to where he wants them to be on particular plays. That bodes well for LaShawn Sims. Like I said earlier, he's always close. If he can just get his head around a little closer, fine-tune his instincts and get a little better, he'd be the kind of big cornerback that Dick LeBeau absolutely loves. So I guess that's going to be my guess, but I don't know. I'm interested to hear what you guys think.
Not worried about what they're doing in training camp right now because the incumbent is always going to get the first look with Mike Mularkey, I believe, unless it's a situation where we know Corey Davis is going to end up being a starter here pretty quick, so he's going to get a lot of first-team reps. Then as training camp progresses, we'll see a better idea of what they're really going to do with their rotations. I still expect Logan Ryan, and if he can hold the spot, I think Sims has got it. Matt's boy Hurst, I think, is going to be in the mix. But you're going to see probably a fair amount of rotation with Sims. I think Hurst might work his way up there and challenge Sims for that spot. They're going to get Adoree Jackson on the field early and often. I just don't know what they're going to do with him for sure. If they're going to give him some just matchup-based reps on the outside or if he's going to play the slot most of the time. Like I keep saying, though, this whole team is about matchups and being able to handle different types of players. Like last year, we didn't have a player on the field who could run with Ted Ginn. He's not that good of a receiver. He drops as many balls as he catches. But if he catches the ball, he's gone because we couldn't run with the man. That's all it came down to. And I think Adoree Jackson is kind of an answer to that. You now have a defensive back who's capable of turning and running with the fastest guy on the other team. So those are going to be his calling card games where, okay, it's you and that jackass over there. Go shut him down. You stay close to him. You stay within a step of him the entire game. Those will be Adoree Jackson's guaranteed play moments. And they're not going to worry so much about who's the starter as who matches up best with this other guy. Because, the Patriots, where Logan Ryan came from, that's what they do. They create matchups. They change their plan every week. I think this coaching staff, while not Bill Belichick level, has that in them where they do different things based on who they're playing instead of just going, we're going to come out here, we're going to run what we run better than everybody else. Because that old school style of football just doesn't work as well in the NFL anymore.
Yeah, Glenn, evidently you got a good look at my notes because I almost wrote the exact same thing as you. It's going to be matched up based. It's going to be 100% matchup based. You look at what we have right now. We have guys that can do different things. Last year, it just felt like we had a team full of nickel corners. Just a whole goddamn team full of nickel corners. Now we have guys that can do different things. Sims is going to play really well against big physical receivers because he has that physicality to him. He can mirror really well. He can get up. he's going to do well there. You know, when we have a guy like a Ted Ginn or a guy that just burns down the sideline, you're going to have a Dory Jackson in your back pocket to throw out there. But if I was going to have to say, you know, top 4 guys going out, I think Logan Ryan's obvious, you know, like we were saying, like Benjamin said at the top of this question. I think Sims is going to be your other guy there, but I honestly think McCain's going to get more time on the field than Adoree Jackson is. And my reason for this is Adoree Jackson right now is so raw. McCain's used to this system. McCain's he's been in the system for a little bit. He knows how to play it. Jackson doesn't, and Jackson's more raw. You know, I love Adoree Jackson, but I think it's going to take him a couple years before we see his potential. And so I think we're going to see McCain on the field a little bit more just because he's more familiar with the system. And Dick LeBeau, like Benjamin said, he doesn't like starting rookies. But I still think it's going to be 100% matchup based. You're going to see Logan Ryan starting to nickel in some games. You're going to see Sims in 1 week, he'll be starting CB1, and the next week he'll be CB3. You're going to see stuff switch often because it's always going to be matched up based.
And I'm telling you, man, when we run nickel and dime stuff, you're going to see more 3 safety sets than we saw last year. We saw a little bit of it last year, but you know, I think they're going to try and leverage that depth at safety to offset some of the shallowness at the cornerback spot.
Yeah,
I agree. When you were saying that earlier, I was thinking the same thing. It's like, I don't see any reason why you don't put these 3 guys on there together. You know, you can drop Sip down. You can let Cersei and Byard roam the back end of it. You can do whatever you want with these guys because they all have a decent enough skill set. Sip isn't going to get you a ton of interceptions, but he's capable of making the play. And he can definitely come down and, you know, cover on a tight end a little bit, mirror the running back out of the backfield so the linebackers can worry about getting to the quarterback. There's definitely options to be had with this group because we do have 3 capable people back there at safety, and you normally only use 2 or 1. So you're going to see some different looking sets from them when our matchups for our corners, like we have to use Adoree in order to keep up with this guy, but we need a safety to mirror him. So maybe you end up seeing an extra safety on the field just to help him out or just to help take care of the tight ends because they abused us so bad last year.
That was exactly what I was going to say is those tight ends. I expect you to see a lot of that 3 safety set when we play teams with good tight ends. I think you're going to see Sit be that, you know, tweener kind of guy that everybody's calling it now that comes down, he plays in the box, you know, because he's so good at sniffing out the run. I mean, he is one of the best safeties, if not the best at sniffing out the run. So I think you're going to see him play a lot down in the box as, you know, the de facto other inside linebacker, and then you're going to see him cover tight ends on passing plays. I definitely expect to see that as long as Andrew's healthy. I'll say that I expect to see it against the Colts. I expect to see that against teams that have good tight ends. You know, Doyle's an up and coming guy. I expect to see a lot of that against that Colts game.
They don't even have to have good tight ends. We got eat up last year by C.J. Fedorowicz.
You're not wrong.
Case closed. I mean, they needed major change covering tight ends, dude. We've been garbage at that since the mid-2000s. It doesn't matter who they brought in, what scheme they brought in. We have never been able to cover tight ends for some reason. This is the first offseason I've really seen them make inroads, I think, at that aspect.
This is the first coaching staff I've seen identify a problem and draft the right players to fix it instead of just drafting more athletes and hoping that it'll work out for itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone put a picture up the other day, just reminded me of Tank Williams, and I was like, man, that's a guy I forgot about. Like, wow.
Hell yeah, Tank Williams, Lamont Thompson.
Right. There was just a guy, though, that as soon as I saw his picture, you know who he is, but you're like, wow, man, I haven't heard that name or seen that guy in a while. I forgot about him. And, yeah, and we finally have, you know, solid starters and great depth at safety. So I definitely think you're right, Benjamin. I think it's something you see a good bit of this season.
Let's see, Keith Bullock was really the last guy we had with the physical ability to do that, but teams recognized it and they would just line up or move or motion their tight end away from him.
Yeah.
Right.
When there's only one guy on the field capable of doing anything about what you're going to do, you just go the other way or else you overload right in his face. You know, I mean,
yeah, and then all of a sudden they got
easy.
5'6" Stevens Hullock out there trying to get him.
Thanks everybody that wrote into the mailbag, though. As each and every week, as I always say, you can find it on our Facebook page, Two Tone Uncensored on Facebook, or we always share it in the Two Tone Uncensored Facebook fan page So definitely, if you want to hear your question answered on the show, that's where you can find it each and every week. Let's jump into the news, guys. This was our favorite news story last week, talking about Sebastian Tretola. Obviously, this week was released. So, Benjamin, before we jump into the nuances of this, we have a theory on the show, and I want to see how much you agree with this theory. What we know about the Tretola incident is he had a grazing gun wound where the bullet grazed his leg and his ankle, and that he went to the hospital, he was released, he was okay, then the team releases him. Our theory is it very could possibly be a self-shooting incident, an accident where he accidentally shot himself. Sounds like you agree.
I 100%, I was just about to say that. As soon as I saw the description of the thing, he's like, oh, he shot himself. And I mean, you can't be one of those dudes on a team that's trying to completely rebuild its culture. That took huge strides in that last year, just as much as anything else. They changed the character and the culture in that locker room. You can't have dudes who just end up in the wrong place at the wrong time, more than once in the off season, especially when it's a sixth or seventh guy on your offensive line like Seabass. I hate to see him go, but between the bar fight with Tajay, where he was apparently the lookout, and then, this self-inflicted gunshot wound, it's easier just to cut bait and focus on the guys who are going to stick around and do the right thing.
Yeah,
he definitely shot himself.
Yeah, last week I dubbed him Cheddar Bob and started presenting my case, and then Ryan started thinking about this, and he's fully on board. Cheddar Bob shot his damn self because the only two questions are either he shot himself, or two possibilities. He shot himself, or else he grabbed somebody's gun and held it down against his leg, and then they pulled the trigger. But you know what? As Ryan said last week, there's no way that this is somebody shot him and it's this quiet. You don't hear anything about a police report, as far as suspects, possibly identified this man. He shot himself. There's the only reason why it's that quiet. There's nothing else going on.
Right. Last week we were talking about it, and me and Glenn were on the same page. Like, as soon as we started, you were like, yeah, he shot himself. And Matt was like, at first he was like, well, I don't know. And then when we laid out our argument, Matt's like, you guys completely changed my mind. I didn't even think about this as a possibility. But, like I said last week, and Glenn touched on it, if someone shoots me, I'm telling everybody that'll listen. That guy shot me. He shot me. He needs to be in jail. He needs to be away from me, obviously. If I shoot myself, I'm taking that to the grave. I'm not telling anybody about that. You haven't heard anything really besides like the stuff I said earlier, and it really points. Not only does where it grazed him, the foot or the leg and the ankle, but also that we haven't heard anything about it at all, except for a grazing of a bullet occurred to a player. Those two things together, I agree with you, Benjamin. I think it's obviously a self-inflicted wound.
Yeah, and it stinks. I mean, I wish the best for him. I was excited when we drafted him. He's a really charismatic guy, good interview. And I think he's got some upside as a run-blocking, kind of reserve swingman type guard center backup dude in the NFL, but just not worth the headache for a team that's, really trying to solidify what it started last year. You can't start making exceptions this quickly.
Did he get claimed off of waivers?
Yeah, I checked earlier today and no, but I haven't checked since then. So
See,
I'm not 100%.
That's what I was thinking is he's not going to get claimed off of waivers until he can explain how he got shot. And if he shot himself, he's not going to get claimed off of waivers. I don't think he gets picked up. I really hope for his case that this was him grabbing somebody's gun and slapping it down to his leg to try to keep him from shooting somebody else, and he was being a hero and just won't talk about it. That would be the best scenario for him possible. I really believe he shot himself, and no team will deal with somebody who's shooting themselves. He's not Plexico Burrs. He's not even good yet.
Yeah.
He's a one-trick pony at this point, and he couldn't get on the field. There's no way he gets signed if he shot himself at this point.
Glenn, I was going to say, I think you're being too optimistic here. I think the best case scenario for him is it was a low caliber. I think that's the best case scenario for him.
Yeah.
But like Benjamin said, he's involved in one incident, which they tried to cover up, and then came back and said that they did do it. There was a part of it, and then they obviously, like Benjamin said, they still have the civil suit open, and then this comes forward. You can't deal with that from a guy that's going to be your depth at guard. That's all he is, and he is, just like Glenn said, a one-trick pony. He's a great run blocker. He can't block against the pass very well, you're not going to save that guy. You're not going to defend his actions and keep him on your team when he's that much of a distraction in the offseason. And, like I said last week, you get a leash, and the better you are, the longer your leash is in the NFL, the more you can get away with. His leash was short, and, he choked himself with it. Let's move on to the next one here. It's something that we've already obviously covered a little bit, but Corey Davis looked like a holdout for a while. Looked like he was going to miss maybe some time, and then the deal got done pretty quickly after camp started, and he ended up getting signed the last of the 2017 draft to sign, and he's obviously out there running around like we were talking about earlier, getting some of this training camp. What did you think about that, guys?
Dude, I will just say, it's the weirdest thing in the world to me, how the Titans have this habit of having their first-round picks be like some of the last guys in the NFL to sign. The reason it's so weird is, like you hit on earlier, a lot of it has to do with offset stuff, has to do with certain exclusions, some of the nitty-gritty stuff, because there's not really that much flexibility in the rookie contract anymore. But this transcends ownership groups, it transcends GM groups, and it transcends coaching staff. If you look at Reinfeld, Webster, and now John Robinson, they've all had it happen. If you look at Tommy Smith Bud Adams running things, Tommy Smith running things, and now Amy Adams Strunk, same story. Whether it's Jeff Fisher, Munchak, Malarkey, or Wisenhunt, same story. Whether it was Kendall Wright, I think Chance got in early. Just about everybody else, though, has been right up to the cusp. And some of them have even missed a day or two of training camp. And it's just baffling me because there's just not that much to negotiate. So overall, I'm very happy they got it done. Not a big deal, but it still continues to be a head scratcher.
Yeah, but as long as it didn't last, past like the first day or two of it, when it's like, obviously you need to be here and be on the field because this team is not going to put up with your shit if you don't. I think that we see less and less of that. A number 5 pick wide receiver, I expect some diva-ish from. So, okay. If like Joey Bosa, he should have damn signed and just got on the field already. But again, it was just the San Diego Chargers are jerks about not wanting to pay people all their money their first year. I do really wonder what it's got to be something in the Adams family because they're the only consistent thing there. Because it's not just Amy Adams, like you said, this has been going on for a long time with this team. So maybe there's something about the way the Adams family does business that just doesn't rub the players the right way.
We've talked to some players, and I've heard in interviews before, Bud Adams is known as a tough negotiator. Sometimes he would, lease the farm to go out there and find that guy that he wanted. But for the most part, he was a pretty tough negotiator, and he was going to get the dollar amount that he wanted or very close to. And I wonder if, just like you said, Glenn, it's the only consistent part. We're talking about a GM in his second year, a head coach in his second year. So the Adams family is the only consistent part. And I wonder if Amy's has that same mentality. And, being the daughter of, you would have to have a lot of similarities with your father and seeing how he operated. And so I wonder if that was part of it as well, is just they were tough negotiators and they were going to try as hard as they could to get exactly what they wanted.
About the only commonality through all these different situations. And, sometimes he's a formal advisor, sometimes he's an informal advisor, but Steve Underwood, just about the only guy that's sort of been around for all of these and who has a heavy say in sort of some of these negotiations. So, hey, man, he's signed, he's here, he's in camp, he's out there doing good stuff already, getting some rhythm with Marcus. That's what's most important.
Absolutely agreed.
Yeah, you're right there for sure. One more piece of news. Obviously, we talked about this earlier as well, but Kevin Dodd, healthy and on the field. We heard Tyler's take on it earlier about how he's, performing and stuff. So I was going to ask you this, guys. What's like the bare minimum that Kevin Dodd can do this year that you think, all right, bust is unfair and he's coming back next year? That's obvious.
Ooh. I think he's coming back next year kind of no matter what, just as they invested a high enough pick in him, and this is just his second year. But I would like to see at least 6 sacks out of him and to play in probably 14 of the 16 games. That's what I'm expecting from him to really make up for last year.
Yeah, unless he just gets another little small nagging injury and just drags that out through the whole season, I don't see any way that they don't bring him back. He'd have to do something stupid to get himself not here next year. So he'll be here next year. I need him to show me that he's going to be the heir apparent for Morgan. He needs to show me some ability on the field, not just college tapes, and not just non-padded practices. I want to see what he can do on the field against live opponents, and he needs to show this year that he's going to be able to be the replacement for Derek Morgan here in a couple years, so that they don't draft his replacement next year. I think that's his challenge this year, is prove that they don't need another outside linebacker to replace him too.
I think you guys are right with the right on point with the he's going to be here next year unless he pulls a Trey Tola, he's going to be here next year without a shadow of a doubt. But yeah, I mean, I'm going a little bit under what Benjamin said. If he has 4 sacks, if he's productive, I still think 14 out of 16 that he plays in those, that's fair. But I want to see him be at least consistent. I'm okay if he doesn't get those 6 sacks as long as he's providing pressure. Walden, the signing of Eric Walden, that also adds some complications to it because it's gonna cut into his time at least a little bit of how much he's on the field. So as long as he's out there, he's playing consistently. I don't question Dodd on the field, and I think you guys would agree with this. I don't question his ability to play. I question what's going on upstairs. So as long as I see him out there, giving that effort, being part of this football team, and proving himself, that's all you can really ask for. You can't be really mad at improvement. I want to see him out there, and I want to see where his mind's at. All right, Ben, before we hop off here, we had some questions, stuff that we've talked about on the show and we've answered, just to get your opinion on a few questions here. What's the camp battle that you're most excited for?
Ooh, probably what's going on in the secondary. And I mean, I don't think it's going to be a battle that proves it out or settles itself out as 1, 2, 3, 4. But can these guys, with the mismatch of skills that they have, can they all kind of find their way to excel? I think that's going to be the key, because we're not going to have a situation where, it's Logan and it's Adoree, or it's Logan and it's Sims or McCain or whoever on the other side, and those are the 2 dudes that are out there on the side all the time, and same guy in the nickel all the time, and same safeties out there all the time. And it's going to be sort of package dependent, and sometimes that can be tricky for NFL guys on offense or on defense to think of it more as playing a role instead of playing a position.
Yeah, that will be the challenge, is their mental approach to it, and how will the coaches make sure that they understand, this is what you're here to do. This is the situations that we need you to go out and excel in. Make the most of these moments, and you can be the star that you want to be. If you don't go out there and make the most of these moments, then you won't even see the field anymore, so it won't be an issue. So they have to accept that being on the field all the time is less important than excelling when they are on the field.
Absolutely. Well put, guys. Which rookie are you most excited to see on the field?
True. I mean, I think it's a pretty exciting class. I like Jonnu a lot. I like Muhammad, the little fast running back that we got. But I mean, Corey Davis. I mean, one of the highest. I think the highest we've ever taken a wide receiver. A guy who had an unreal college career. The sky's the absolute limit for him. I'm excited to see what he can do, especially with a quarterback like Marcus, who can make wide receivers look even better than they kind of normally do.
Yep, right there.
Yeah, a guy like Corey Davis, going in, I got to see him play. And Ben, I know you don't know this, but I'm at Ohio University. I got to see him play last year, and I wasn't overly impressed. I felt like a lot of it was competition, but now I've been watching a little bit more tape, and I've been trying to open myself up to, my opinion changing and watching him in training camp and stuff. And obviously, like you said earlier, training camp lends to make him look better than he actually is. And we'll have to see how he handles, pressure and man coverage and stuff like that. But I'm starting to change my tune a little bit. I am pretty excited about Corey Davis, and I'm getting more and more on the Davis bandwagon. I'm not there yet, but, I'm flirting with it right now.
You're there.
I'm not there yet.
You're there.
What dark horse player on the team do you think has the best shot of making the team? What's that guy that's buried, but you think could make a run for it?
Oh, man, I don't know. That's kind of tough because if you look at this roster, there's not really a whole lot of dark horse guys. I mean, this is the first time since probably about 2008, 2010 era when I think we have so much talent in training camp, we're going to have to cut guys who end up playing significant roles somewhere else just because of the sheer amount of talent that we have. I mean, you think back to when we cut Jack Doyle, for example, when we cut, the nose tackle that ended up going to Indianapolis. I've got Booger McFarland stuck in my head, and that's not it. Back to those years when, like I said, we're going to let go of guys who catch on elsewhere and end up doing something. So, I mean, I don't know if I can really pick one necessarily. Maybe it's the tight end we got from the Jets last year. I'll say something on his name.
Jason Morrow.
Yep.
Yeah, Jason Morrow. I mean, he's a guy that I think it's a classic almost sort of redraft thing that you see in a lot of different sports. He started out really nicely with the Jets. He was a high draft pick and then ended up just kind of washing out as the regime changed over there. I'd like to see him contribute more this year with the turnover that we've had at that position. I'm not a Supernall fan.
Yeah, none of us on this show are. Ryan was a big fan of the Morrow signing. I'm kind of on the fence. I'm with you. I want to see him do more, but mostly just so he can push Supernall off the roster. That's my main concern with him.
Yeah, I definitely was. I was big on the Amaro, but, me and Glenn are both Big 12 guys, and I got to see a lot of Amaro in college, and I was very impressed. I thought that he did more for his quarterbacks than his quarterbacks did for him most of the time. I was very impressed with what I saw from him. And, that's not my team. I'm a West Virginia fan, but, at the time, we had the best defense in the Big 12. And, he cut us up. He did a good job against us, and I was really impressed by him. And I watched him, after that game, watch the rest of the season almost with him because I was really impressed. But, yeah, he has, I guess, his game's just not translating well or whatever the reason is. He's not been impressive so far. I mean, if the Jets are cutting you, it's not looking good for your career, bud.
Well, right now, not so much because it's all about the purge with the Jets. They're just trying to lose as many games as they can.
Right, this year. But last year, they still thought they had something in Fitzmagic. But,
oh, yeah.
I would like to see Amaro play well enough. I'm not saying they should just, give him the spot. I'd like to see him play well enough to kick Supernall off, just like you guys. But, I mean, we'll have to see about that. He's not a great blocker, so I think Supernall makes the team still. That's about all we have for you, Ben. For everybody that was listening to the show earlier, Benjamin is a member of RPO, which is another Titans podcast. Benjamin, for those who want to follow RPO or want to find you, where do they find you and where do they find the show?
Yeah, RPO stands for Run Pass Opinion. You can find us at runpassopinion.com. We're also on Facebook. We're at Twitter at the RPO Pod. You can find me on Twitter at RPO Benjamin, and then my co-hosts are Matt Neely and Brandon. And yeah, we do, like I said, we've been on a little bit of a hiatus through July. I've been doing a podcast for the Titans going back to MCM radio since 2009. And July is just absolute death. So now that we went kind of independent, decided to sort of take a big break in July so we can come back fully charged. We're going to start things back up this week, actually later this week. And we'll be back to doing, at least one show, probably two shows per week. I hope you guys will check it out. We like to have a lot of fun, have some laughs, and talk some really good Titan stuff in there. Matt Neely's from the Titan subreddit. He does a lot of the meme stuff that's on there. He's awesome, and Brandon's been great since he joined me on MCM Radio last year. So help us have some fun with this kind of independent venture over at runpassopinion.com. And thank you guys so much for having me on.
Thank you for being here, man.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks again for Benjamin Scott for coming on to the show with us. Obviously, a really great co-host to have on. But guys, before we jump out of here, make sure you're following us on Twitter. You can find the show at ttupodcast.com. You can find me at the Ryan Moreland. Glenn, yours is, I can't remember. What's yours, Glenn?
2, the number 2, Tone Hollywood.
I knew it had Hollywood in it. That's all I can remember.
There you go.
Give us a good rating too, man. We ask for that every now and again. However you listen to us, give us a 5-star rating on that, whatever app it is or however you listen. We definitely appreciate it, and it helps the show grow. So if you like the show, give us a good rating. The raffle's still going on. It's coming to its conclusion pretty soon. This is going to be a couple more weeks, and it's over. So if you want to try to win those Week 9 tickets to go see the Tennessee Titans take on the Baltimore Ravens, also you can win some other great prizes, a spot in our fantasy football league for the main TTU fantasy football league. You can win a chance to come on the show and give your predictions for the start of the season, your season predictions. You can also win a shout-out on the show. So definitely, those tickets are just $2 a pop. Go find them on our website, which is www.ttupodcast.com. And you'll find the store right there in the menu, and go on there and buy some tickets. Also, but again, as I say each and every week, thanks to my awesome co-hosts. Matt couldn't be on tonight. Glenn, it's always a good time. Here. Yeah, always here, always a good time. Thanks a lot for Benjamin Scott for coming on the show with us. Thanks a lot to Tyler Mustin for being our reporter on the scene. And we'll be back next week on Wednesday. Tighten up.
Tighten up.
Podbean.
Thanks for listening to the Two-Tone Uncensored podcast. You can listen to the show at twotoneuncensored.podbean.com or by downloading the Podbean app on your mobile device. Be sure to follow the show on Twitter at Two-Tone Uncensored and like us on Facebook.